opened up the can.
Go right ahead.
This isn't just myself. It's several other meteorologists I've been speaking to. We're members of the American Meteorological Society, AMS. That's like the AMA for medical doctors.
Right, sure.
Several have dropped out because of a view of the AMS. You go on their website, and it's totally slanted on the green energy. Mm-hmm. Now, they're the American Meteorological Society. Should be open-minded, should be all views.
Yes.
By the definition of society.
Yeah, and it is not now because they're funded mainly by universities, people from university systems, and the federal government.
Do we see the EPA meddling in this process and putting pressure on scientists and trying to backdoor what they couldn't get done?
Yes. But first, let me finish this one thing on the AMS. A year and a half ago, I wanted my corporation to become a member. Mm-hmm. Their six-panel board said no. And I spoke to someone at AMS, and they said, well, I've been here 15 years. There's only been 3 companies that have been denied membership. So I asked the president why, and he came back and said, well, we don't have any records on why, just that 6 people voted no. Well, that's a red flag right there.
Yes.
If they can't tell you a reason why, it's because they went on my website and they saw that my website is all about natural cycles and my ebook on natural cycles. They don't want anyone to know about this. And other people have dropped out of the AMS for the same reason. There is a leading meteorologist, Dr. Bill Gray, Colorado State. He's a famous hurricane forecaster. Mm-hmm. He's been pretty much blackballed from AMS because he's talking about natural cycles.
Really?
He's retired now, and he can do that now because he's not in the...
Because he's not affiliated, right?
Yes, so he can do that, and that's his goal, he says, the rest of his life, is to talk about the natural cycles. Mm-hmm. But he's been kind of blackballed, and I'm kind of probably blackballed myself. And then you had a question you were leading in
about the EPA and what they're trying to do.
FEMA
in the background.
FEMA is a perfect example. This is one reason that I was invited to speak at Save Our Shores. FEMA is pushing all the states that the oceans are going to rise 5 to 8 feet.
Yes, right.
By the end of the century here, which is 100% totally untrue, because our peak in this interglacial period was 7,000 years ago.
Right.
We're now in a cooling trend. No, we haven't cooled off yet. Oceans are still slightly rising, but now we're going into a global cooling cycle now, starting now, pretty much. And it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. If they wanted to see it happen, they'll probably have to wait about 116,000 years.
Well, isn't natural variation in sea levels measured by centimeters over decades, if not 100 years? I mean, it's not like the ocean rises 2 feet in 25 years. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't happen.
Well, a good portion of a rise during the past, since 1900 until now. And it's only risen, I don't know what it is, 6 inches or so. And it depends where you are around the world. Mm-hmm. Most of the rise is because the oceans have warmed during this period. We're in a global warming cycle. When you warm anything, it expands.
Right.
Right.
Then when it cools, it contracts.
Right.
So now when we go into the global cooling cycle, the oceans are going to contract. And we're probably, more than likely, going to see a drop in sea levels during the next 20, 30, 40 years. Not a rise, but at least, at the very minimum, it'll stay steady, but it should be actually dropping during that period. So they're way off. Here, 80, 90 years from now, they think the coast area is going to have big water problems. No, the ocean levels are going to be lower.
A government agency that's way off. Wow, that's rare, huh?
Well, it's ironic that they can get 6 scientists to agree on something when it's this topic. But put those 6 scientists in any other environment, and they're never going to agree across the board on anything. No, it's by the nature of what scientists do, that's what they do.
That's right, and you debate the scientists, and they don't have answers. They can't back up the science for the man-made global warming. They can't back it up. There's no
plus
science
they're mixing
for it.
Emotion with science. You know, you see pictures of the polar bears and the smokestacks, billowing smoke out. and they've got an emotional play there that they can use to their advantage. But when you look at the science on the other side, there isn't, polar bears falling into the water and giant smokestacks billowing smoke. It's more factual data that you're looking at.
Well, they try to use the scare tactics on the polar bears dying, for one thing.
Well, that's how they can demonize anyone who doesn't agree with them.
But the facts are, polar bears, they're breeding better, and there's more polar bears now than ever in modern history. Not less. And if anything, they'll end up having too many polar bears. So usually anything they say is a kind of a distorted, they distort it to get it to look like the way they want it to.
Right. And if you don't agree, you want to see polar bears starve to death. It's always the emotional
extreme,
play. Well, if you don't agree with me, then you want to see bad things happen to animals.
Right.
Which is ridiculous.
Crazy. And on that note, let's take another break. We'll be back with more of Mind Your Own Business Radio on News Talk WLOB. Don't go away, there's more. Mind Your Own Business Radio on News Talk WLOB. WLOBradio.com.
Mind your own business.
Our local expert in CNC, 3D CAD, and motion analysis is Mike Davison of CM Design. With over 30 years of mechanical design and machining experience, Mike specializes in short runs and prototype work. Plastics, ferrous, or non-ferrous metals. If you can dream it up, Mike can make it. Complete from documentation to final product. So let Mike Davison of CM Design help bring your ideas to life. Find out more at cmdesignco.com.
In today's digital age of instant communication, the art of conversation is being lost. Too often, verbal communication is reduced to shouting, not talking. Join me, Steve Woods, also known as Steve-O, for Tide Smart Talk with Steve-O, for inspired conversations with extraordinary guests. We'll talk sports, health, green, and life its own self. Catch Tide Smart Talk with Steve-O, Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on News Talk WLOB, AM 1310, streaming live on WLOBradio.com.
Mind Your Own Business Radio. Welcome back to Mind Your Own Business Radio on News Talk WLOB. I'm Debbie Davis, and with me is
Tom Sarna.
And we're talking with David Dilley. He is the Chief Research Scientist, the President, and the founder of Global Weather Oscillations. And you mainly study
Climate cycles.
Climate cycles.
And what causes climate cycles.
So, David, where are we in the cycle? And take us back through the other cycle prior to, and tell us where we are.
Okay, where we are in the cycle. What we have is every 116,000 years, as the Earth revolves around the sun, it swings out away from the sun further every 116,000 years. Mm-hmm. Because we're further away from the sun, we get less solar radiation. The sun is not as strong.
Right.
So we cool down. So every 116,000 years, we go into a glacial period where there's a mile-thick ice from New York City northward year-round,
right,
covering all the vegetation and the oceans cool down. Mm-hmm. Every 116,000 years. We've had 5 such instances back during the past 500,000 years. So that's what causes the glacial periods. Now, just like the Earth revolving around the sun, we have the moon revolving around the Earth every 24 hours, or just less than 24 hours. The moon also swings out further and or closer to the Earth. Mm-hmm. Well, this is pretty much every month we'll have it swing out and back. And we'll have an increase of the gravitational pull. Every 6 months, it'll be a closer swing into the Earth. So we have a very strong gravitational pull on the Earth's oceans and atmosphere and inner core, for if we talk about earthquakes or so forth.
Oh,
but it does swing in closer to us every 6 months. We get a strong cycle where the gravitational pull on the Earth increases by 24%.
Wow.
Okay.
And
That's
then we also get a situation where the Earth, Moon, and Sun line up together.
Right.
When they line up together, that reinforces the gravitational pull because of the Sun's involved also. So now we add another 24%. So here we are. Every 6 months we get a cycle where gravitational tug on the Earth increases by 48%. That's a huge increase.
Yes.
48%. Now here in Portland we have a tide every day of about 9 feet. We have a huge ocean out there. All of a sudden we have a big gravitational tug 48% above normal. And then it relaxes again.
And that's happening every 6 months.
Every 6 months. That's like a plunger out there in the ocean, rising and lowering it.
Oh, yeah.
This plunger can actually change some of the ocean currents. It can cause, when you get into a very strong one that happens during global warming cycles every 72 years, it can send a very warm pulse of water up into the Arctic to cause, glacial melt up there.
And is that connected to El Nino, El Nina?
These cycles,
Those cycles?
I use the cycles, all the cycles for predicting El Nino, because what happens is the gravitational cycles not only affects the oceans, but there's an atmospheric tide also. So the atmospheric tide, what will do is displace the Bermuda High, put it in a different position during these cycles. Mm-hmm. So I can track the cycles, and I can determine from year to year if the Bermuda High is going to be strong or kind of where it's going to be. And hurricanes go around the periphery of the Bermuda High. So if we know the Bermuda High is going to be somewhere, we can do the hurricane cycles. So the aspect of my research covers just about everything, hurricanes to climate change, to also have a pilot program for the California earthquake, which is, if you're on my website, you can check the earthquake section, and it just went into what I call the red envelope period. I posted the prediction on my website 2 to 3 years ago, and just let it sit there, not touching it, and the peak period for the potential for a major earthquake is between November and March of this coming year for California, the big one.
Really?
I think it's easy for people to lose sight about how all these things are interconnected. And when you think about a 9-foot tide every day, the amount of water that's moving around the planet it's mind-boggling.
Oh, it's mind-boggling. And anytime you're increasing and relaxing a gravitational tug of 48%, for earthquakes, for example, you have the inner core of the Earth, which is solid, hot metal, 80% metal. The outer core just around that is hot, liquid iron.
Right.
And above that, you have a mantle and the plates that ride on it. So what happens, that outer core, that's the hot, liquid iron, during certain gravitational cycles, it can bulge by 1.4 kilometers.
Wow.
That's a huge bulge. Now, if that's bulging like that,
'cause it's squeezing
you've got
the planet.
mantle and plate above it, that has to bulge some.
Sure.
So then, all of a sudden, that plate can slip. That's an earthquake.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
for example, for California, what I did is on my cycles, I just tracked the big earthquakes since 1800 up through time on the cycles.
And you track that and you compare it with the other cycles, the gravitational cycles of us going around.
Yes.
You got there.
So you create forecasts for earthquakes, for hurricanes, for climate cycles. What do you do with these when you've completed them? And how long does it take to do one?
Well, for the hurricanes, for example, I have 11 zones. I usually sit down about October 1st and finish that up mid-December.
Really?
So it's continual, basically.
Because I have 11 zones that I have to analyze each one on the cycles. Every year I'll reanalyze it to perfect it better and to do additional tracking and go out an additional year on it. So that takes time to do. There's a company that I'm starting to do business with that's going to be marketing my hurricane products called Wall Street Network. And they're doing it through what they call extremegis.com, using computer-generated data where they'll put in my forecast